Hello and welcome to December 11th. So we are continuing to truck right along here, and as you can see, we're starting to feel the Christmas season around here, and I think that might be in part due to today's tea. Day 11 here is Candy Cane Crush. So as I bring this all up in here, we're seeing some candy pieces in there, and yep, I see some red, so there's some candy cane, just like my sleeves. Aww. All right, so today's tea is 1 pip as far as our caffeine count. Remember, the max is 3, so we do actually have some real tea in this particular blend today. We are going to steep it at 95 degrees Celsius for 3 to 5 minutes. So pretty much our standard steep time and temperature with that. Today's tea includes black tea, white chocolate, peppermint candy, snowflake candies, cane sugar, peppermint, and natural peppermint and vanilla flavorings. I'm actually pretty excited about this tea. For one, it's got more alliteration in that title. It's Candy Cane Crush, so that C sound, which I love. I'm an English nerd. I think alliteration is great. And another thing is I do like peppermint, despite what you might think after the North African mint tea review. Again, that was a brand about licorice, not about mint. I like mint. Plus, there is black tea, and that is my personal favorite variety of the teas. Again, I will drink all. I drink green tea, black tea, white tea, rooibos tea, oolong tea. Pretty much if it's a tea or a hot beverage, as I have said, I will drink it at least once. And actually what I'm really excited about is this tea makes me think a little bit about one of my favorite teas that I've had, which is a vanilla black tea. So it's black tea flavored with natural vanilla flavorings and some vanilla bean in there. And it's such a good tea as a dessert. You just add a little bit of cream, little bit of sugar, and it ends up being this really wonderful tea to drink, and you can pair it with a dessert or you can just drink it as a dessert on its own. I tend to run out of that constantly, so I'm really excited about this and hoping that this tea will be somewhat like that, but obviously minty. Now, of course, this particular tea with the candies in it, I'm really not expecting to ever want to put with sugar, but potentially we'll have to see what that balance of flavor is, and potentially actually also with a bit of that cream, this could be a really decadent indulgence. So we'll have to see. So I'm actually really excited. So that one was almost a challenge to open again. Oh, so remember how I did with the North African mint? I did the scale on 1 to Celestial Seasonings Mint Room, and I ranked that one at about a 3. This one's up there at about like a good 5, almost a 6. The mint is so very present. I mean, yeah, it's, you stick your face inside of a candy cane if you could. So good. Oh, this makes me so excited. I mean, yes, it has the white chocolate, so there's probably going to be oil on the surface of my tea, which not super thrilled about, as we have learned, but I'm pretty sure I can get over it because I'm just going to stick my nose straight into this tea, and it's just, oh, yeah, I definitely just snorted tea up my nose. Okay. Yep. Perfect. So anyway, let's shake this out and get a good look at it before I end up accidentally snorting more tea. All right. So popping over here to this other camera, absolutely we see black tea really clearly. That's all that black stuff throughout. Here, that is the black tea, obviously. Here's white chocolate. It looks exactly like a white chocolate chip, and there it is. White chocolate, black tea, excellent. I don't have a ton of peppermint candy, which I'm a little sad about. Fortunately, I do have some candy canes downstairs, so if I really feel the need, I can go get some more candy canes, but there's some more candy cane there. Snowflake candies. I actually think that these are the same snowflake sprinkles that I had in an earlier tea, because they are shaped like snowflakes there, and they're the only thing that I can think would actually be that kind of candy. So that's fine. I just think it's interesting that they're calling it by a different term here. I don't know that I'm really going to be able to see any peppermint itself. Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe that little bit of green. Ooh, that could be exciting. And then, of course, those other flavorings are going to be infused into the tea in other ways. So let me go ahead and transfer that to my bag. You know, even though I think I'll have some extra of this tea, I don't know that I'm actually going to share it because yum. That is still so good. So good. By smell alone, I recommend that you pick this tea up. It's up there. We'll see what I say after, of course, I taste it. Now, from today's ingredients, I do actually plan to talk about peppermint, and that is, you know, today's predominant flavoring, right? It appears 3 times in the ingredient list in different ways. So absolutely, we should talk about peppermint. Additionally, because of the title and the ingredient of peppermint, that actually gives me a little bit of an opportunity to talk a little bit about candy canes, which, again, it's in the name of the tea. It's Candy Cane Crush. So let's get to talking about peppermint. Peppermint is actually a hybrid mint. It is crossed between water mint and spearmint. So you may or may not have known that, but it is a thing of its own. But you will not find peppermint in the wild unless you also find water mint and spearmint, because again, it is a hybrid. It is indigenous to Europe and the Middle East, but you can find it in many places all over the world, occasionally, as I said, even in the wild, as long as you have those 2 parent mints with it. Peppermint comes from the genus Mentha, which does actually have 25 separate species. However, the most commonly used species is what we call peppermint, or Mentha piperita, or piperita. Piperita. Makes me think of peppers and spice, which I guess some people find peppermint spicy, so that kind of tracks. And that particular genus and species is Western peppermint. There is actually a Chinese peppermint called bohei or bowie. I'm not entirely sure on the pronunciation. It wouldn't be one of my tea videos if I didn't have something I couldn't pronounce, right? And that is the Mentha haplocalyx. Yes. Both are actually recognized as plant sources for menthol and menthone, and that's what gives that mint, which you should expect from the genus name Mentha. And those 2 are among the oldest herbs when it comes to culinary and medicinal products. So we've been using peppermint for a long time. We learned pretty early on that we could eat it and that there were some other benefits from it. Now, peppermint was first described in terms of literature by Carl Linnaeus in 1753, and it was originally treated as its own species, and then later it got retracted when it was realized that, oh, this doesn't actually really grow on its own. It requires that hybridization of those 2 parent plants. So that was eventually corrected. It is a perennial plant and can grow to 35 inches tall, so almost 3 feet. And it has smooth stems that are square if you cross-section them. So if you pull a stem of peppermint and then you actually like cut it and look down at it, it's going to be square. And that's one way that you can actually identify peppermint if you happen to come across it in the wild. Peppermint does have dark green leaves and it has reddish veins, so it's a very festive kind of plant there, right? Dressed up all red and green, looking great for the holiday season, although of course peppermint, as we will find out, does not grow in the winter. The leaves of the peppermint plant have those coarsely toothed margins. That just means that along the edges it kind of looks really rough cut. And they are anywhere from 1.5 to 3.5 inches long. So that's actually a pretty big variant there. And they can be anywhere from 1/2 inch to 1.6 inches across, which means that if you had the max size in both dimensions, you're looking at some really big leaves of peppermint. And that's pretty impressive, really. So this is not a small plant that we're looking at. It is a pretty sizable guy. Peppermint does actually produce a flower, which I didn't know until I started doing the research. And those flowers are actually purple, and they are produced in whorls. So if you know fingerprints at all, like that whorl shape that you might have on that tip, kind of spirally, that's how peppermint flowers grow. And they grow around the stem to form these thick, blunt spikes. So peppermint kind of looks like it's got some little blunt spears poking out at you. Peppermint flowers from mid to late summer. So that's why I said it's not a wintering plant. It's the mid to late summer, and that's when you'll see the flowers. And that is actually one reason, I didn't know that it flowered. I don't know that I've actually seen peppermint growing, for one, and I always associate it as a winter thing. So again, I learned something in doing all this, and that's pretty fun. It's a fast growing plant. So once it grows, it kind of takes hold and then spreads like crazy, which is probably why it's actually considered invasive in Australia, the Galapagos, New Zealand, and the Great Lakes region of the United States, documented as being invasive since 1843. So apparently y'all hate on peppermint out in the Great Lakes. Maybe you didn't know that you did. Now you do. So keep going. It's all right. I do know that invasive species are actually dangerous and all that kind of stuff, but that's not really the point here. Now, peppermint is something that we can actually grow and use in many different cases. If you are going to grow peppermint, sorry, I have a cat who's walking right in front of me. You can't see him, but he is there, so he's a little distracting right now. But peppermint, if you're going to grow it, there he went, likes really moist and shady areas, but you should consider putting it in a pot in order to prevent it from taking over your entire garden. Again, it's invasive and it grows like crazy. For cultivation purposes, the leaves and flowering tops, those little blunt spears, are used and collected as soon as the flowers begin to open, and then can be dried. So basically, as soon as you start to see those little flowers open, someone's going to come along and grab the flowers, and then also grab a lot of the leaves, so that way they can dry out the flowers and really get as much peppermint as they can out of a single plant. Additionally, beyond just growing peppermint for yourself, peppermint has some interesting benefits to use as a natural ingredient. It is a natural pesticide, and it actually has been proven effective against mosquitoes and can actually also serve as a rodent repellent. So you might consider keeping peppermint around for yourself a bit. Additionally, you can use peppermint for medicinal purposes. It helps with pain, which is one reason why you find it frequently in oils and in massage balms and lotions, topical treatments, because it can help with pain. It can also help with itching because of that cooling sensation, and it can even provide some short-term relief from irritable bowel syndrome. So if you are feeling particularly unhappy in the gastro region, a little bit of peppermint might actually be able to soothe you, which personally I do find Pepto-Bismol tastes vaguely like peppermint. I think that's probably what it's aiming for, or like milk of magnesia, trying to get those health benefits from peppermint. The entire process of taking Pepto-Bismol and milk of magnesia is disgusting, but the peppermint makes it a tiny bit better, tiny bit. However, do keep in mind that too much peppermint can cause mucosal irritation, so of your mucous membranes, peppermint can irritate it. And ingesting too much of it can actually mimic feelings of heartburn. So if you already suffer heartburn, definitely take care with how much peppermint you consume. When it comes to growing peppermint in your garden, for instance, there are 7 cultivars, varieties, remember, and if you're looking at it commercially, you'll find at least 9 that are well documented as being used. And when it comes to producing peppermint annually, peppermint production hits around 93,000 tons, and 92% of it comes from Morocco. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the water on here. And we're actually measuring. Woot, there we go. 6 ounces is what I know that my teacup can actually hold. This tea is already slow to release any kind of color, so it's gonna hopefully give us something at the end of that recommended time. Ooh, I'm starting to see a little bit of red leak out. I'm guaranteeing that is from the peppermint candy that is in there. But we're already starting to get a tiny little bit of color. Bit of a slow release though while that water hit the candy cane. So while most of our world's peppermint does come from Morocco, the candy cane itself has origins in Germany, or at least that is what is commonly assumed and accepted, because of the common folklore story where in 1670 in Cologne, Germany, the choir master at Cologne Cathedral asked a local candy maker for some sugar sticks so that way he could essentially shut up the noisy children who were ruining the living creche during the Christmas Eve service. So you have the living nativity going on and you got a bunch of noisy chattering children, and the choir master was over it and he decides, I need to shut these kids up, right? And so he goes to the candy maker, because what do kids love more than candy, right? And he gets the candy maker to make some sugar sticks for him. And ultimately, to justify giving candy to children during a church service, just hear the crinkly plastic if kids had candy canes in church today. That noise alone, I think, would mean that I would never want to hand my child or anyone's child a candy cane during church. I think I'd rather listen to them kind of just go, oh, well, no, I wouldn't either. No, taking that back. Those are both really annoying sounds. But these candy canes in 1670 weren't going to be wrapped in plastic, so he at least didn't have to deal with that. So anyway, he gets all this ready to go, and then in order to justify giving that candy over, he asks the candy maker to put that crook at the top to give them that traditional cane shape, in order to say that it is meant to remind the children of the shepherds who came to visit the baby Jesus. And then one of the colors in candy canes that you probably think of is going to either be that red or the white. The white, according to this particular legend, is meant to teach children about the pure, sinless life of Jesus Christ. I have then also read in other places that the red striping is meant for you to remember the blood of Jesus on the cross and the sacrifices that he then made for you. And then, of course, I've also seen the people who take the candy cane and flip it upside down and show that it's a J, so it's not just shepherds, it's also Jesus. And of course, Jesus is known as the Good Shepherd. So there's a lot of religious symbolism all tied into the candy cane, at least according to this particular origin story. Now, what's interesting is then, if that's the origin of candy canes, then why it took until 1837 to really get more documented cases of candy canes and candy sticks appearing. So in 1837, the exhibition of the Massachusetts Charitable Mechanic Association, which judged confections competitively, so it's basically like your state fair, but for candy. And they actually mentioned stick candy in that particular exhibition. And then a recipe for just a straight up and down peppermint candy stick with colored stripes on a white base was actually published in 1844. So again, if candy canes existed since 1670, I would have expected that the recipe would have been written down a lot earlier and a lot more widely distributed. But I also don't necessarily know the whole history of candy canes. This is just, again, high-level stuff. Candy canes do appear in literature as of 1866, and there is no description of flavor or color. So we actually don't really know what color they're supposed to be based on the literature that exists there. I'm not even sure if the recipe, except for that white, other than that, if like with the white and the colored stripes, that might be the only real published description of what a candy cane is supposed to look like that we have as the basis for it. But it is interesting that that description doesn't come into other literature there in 1866. excuse me, candy canes are noted in the Nursery Monthly magazine in association with Christmas time in 1874. So starting to document when we actually see those candy canes and when they appear. And then in 1882, the Babyland magazine noted that you could hang the candy canes on top of the tree. And so I've actually seen that in a couple of places. People will hang candy canes on the tree, and it's actually a really great way for if you're having a party or a lot of guests over and you want to provide something to them. It's a great way to actually provide a treat to everyone without really having to make it yourself, and also while guaranteeing that anyone who really wants one can definitely take one. And it does look very nice when it's all there with their red and the white, and it's on the green tree. It's actually really also pretty on, like, if you have an artificial tree, you put it on a white tree or a black tree. I mean, really, candy canes are classy, right? They're red and white. It's hard to go wrong with red and white, really. Now, naturally, the earliest candy canes were made by hand, but it was the Bunty Brothers Confectioners out of Chicago. My husband, who is a Chicago person, he comes from Chicago, he has no idea how to pronounce that. He's never heard of this company, so I told him he's a horrible Chicagoan and he should feel bad. But anyway, that particular company, they are one of the first companies to file a patent for a candy cane machine, and that was in the 1920s. So we started to actually standardize the production of candy canes and actually get them to a specific length, so that way you always had the same amount of candy that you're putting into it and rolling the same thickness, all that kind of stuff. There's some really great videos out there, though, of people who make candy canes by hand still, because again, we're into that whole artisanal whatever now. So I find candy making videos fascinating. Granted, I know that sugar has got to be so hot, but it's so cool to watch. Definitely consider checking out some videos on how to make candy, especially things like candy canes. It's interesting. I find it interesting, at least, but I'm weird. In case you didn't know. Now, as of December 2020, so now, according to lolcandy.com, these are the 5 best candy cane brands and varieties in no particular order. So we have Brax red and white peppermint candies made with real peppermint, but when I looked at the list of ingredients that they provided, it's peppermint oil. So not the same kind of peppermint necessarily, really, that we're going to find here. Different form of natural peppermint, just more concentrated because it's the oil, which you would kind of expect actually for a candy. Then there is Sweet Tarts candy canes, not peppermint at all, and there's also no white on them. So if you're giving them to your children to have the same biblical lessons, think about what lesson you might be sending them by not giving them a candy cane that has a white base. You also have Yum Earth Organic Holiday Mini Candy Canes. That was on there, and that's a mouthful. So, bite-sized. You stick a whole mini candy cane in your mouth. I mean, I do. Don't necessarily recommend it, but they're small, right? There is also the Wonka Pixie Sticks filled candy canes. So also not going to be peppermint and also not going to be white. This just seems like a really bad and awesome idea at the same time if you like pixie sticks. So what's better than some sugar? Getting your kid to the straight sugar core. So that way, they're sucking on the candy and then boom, powder sugar, just powdered. It's not powder, but just the sugar substance just straight into their mouth. I wonder if you could suck it out at the end of the candy cane. That'd be probably what I would do. I also don't know that I'd actually eat that. It makes my jaw hurt thinking about that sweet and tart of a candy. Anyway, and then the number 5 one that was on this list was the Spangler Oreo flavored candy cane. Now, I've had some interesting flavored candy canes. Notably, I've had cinnamon candy canes. I've had the white ones that have like the multicolored, almost like rainbow wrapping color around them. And then when you look at the end, they've got that black dot. That black dot I have found is like critical because that tells you that it's cherry flavored, and those are really good. I have also had, I've had, what was it? It was either coal or smoke flavored. It was black. It had almost cinnamony kinds of notes, but it was kind of like that cinnamon mint that you might get at some restaurants, except way worse. And it was bizarre. So I mean, if you really want to, have a candy cane tasting test, you definitely could. I don't necessarily recommend those smoke or coal flavored ones. They are weird. They are a trip and a half, an experience. I've seen but not tasted, thankfully, the bacon flavored ones. Again, you think about how you can possibly extract flavoring from anything and put it into something else. You can probably find a candy cane that's flavored that way. Not really what I was, aiming for in thinking about Candy Cane Crush. Fortunately, I know that this is peppermint candy cane, so I'm happy. Regardless of the flavor or variety of candy cane that you get, candy canes can last 2 to 3 years past their expiration date, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you should let them last that long. You might get some weird other tastes with it, and of course, the longer something sits in plastic, the worse it probably is for you. So I would say always get fresh candy canes year to year, which means I don't actually have mini candy canes downstairs that I can eat. I actually don't think I remember when I bought them. So that tells me it is probably time to say goodbye to those candy canes. Now, of course, the last thing I have for you as far as candy cane information is, because it is 2020 and everyone has an opinion and has to let you know who they are, how they identify, and all that great. It's great. Representation absolutely matters, but because of that, I have to give a quick shout out to those who are vegan and want people to be aware of their veganism. And the typical classic red and white candy cane is actually usually made in such a way that it is vegan. Now, of course, always double check your ingredients, but if you are finding yourself missing out on certain things that you gave up when you went vegan, you're still okay if you have most of the red and white candy canes. All right, I think that we have, filled my time there with 3 to 5 minutes of letting this steep. So looking over here, we've got some interesting separation. We've got that clear color going on top, and then at the bottom is that concentrated kind of reddish brown. Okay, that was cool. As I moved that, it revealed like there was some white from that white chocolate, and then as I moved it, it just swirled all up. And that white chocolate is absolutely making this particular tea super cloudy. Now, of course, it could also be the other candy ingredients in here, but this is a very cloudy tea. You cannot see to the bottom of this glass at all. And I can tell you, yes, indeed, there is some oil on the surface of my tea here. I'm not going to be mad about it today. I'm just not. So let's bring that up here. So it's kind of pinkish in color. We're not getting a lot of brown from that black tea, which is interesting considering how much black tea is in that proportionally. And it still smells like mint. It's retaining that wonderful smell. And from this angle, it's actually looking a little more brown, a little less pink. But it is still kind of pinkish. This smell, I could just smell this tea all day, but that's not what you're here for, so we'll give it a taste. This is a mint tea. It's very, very clearly mint. I still get a bit of tea, more as an aftertaste than as a forefront taste. So I think I would like a little bit more of the tea itself to come a little more forward, but this one is absolutely delightful. I don't even know that I would add cream to it now that I'm thinking about it. What's interesting is it's not as sweet as I was worried it would be, so I might actually add just a scooch of sugar here, maybe a little bit more vanilla. I actually have the sugar-free Tirani vanilla coffee syrup, and so I would probably actually add that to this guy to just make those little bits of flavors pop a little bit more and really bring out that sweetness, because I absolutely think that this tea right here could cure or curb at least a lot of those sugar cravings that you might be having. And again, there's a lot of sugar in this tea because there is actual candy in here. And sugar is also one of the ingredients that was listed. But I actually think that with this particular tea, you might be less tempted to go to the desserts. So if you're looking for a way to still get that sweet treat but avoid hitting the cookies that hard, this tea's up there. Again, that chocolate covered almond is still the tea to beat. But this one might be my number 2 or 3 right now. And as I mentioned in the last video, I am working on actually creating a leaderboard so that way you can actually see all of my rankings and have that finalized list with that important tea information at the end of this video series. So thank you very much for adventuring with me, and I will see you tomorrow.